Well, hey guys, it's Graham here at therecordingrevolution.com. Got a quick video for you today revolving around headphone mixes. Got a request on the website. Wanted to know a little bit more about setting up a separate headphone mix. Hopefully this is what you're looking for me to answer, but what this will be is something helpful for you guys that are recording other people. So maybe you're engineering for other bands, or maybe you're recording for your own band and you are the recording guy in your band. And so eventually you have to play engineer while you record the rest of your bandmates. What is typical for a lot of people is just to let them have a headphone out from, your audio interface, and they're hearing the main mix. And so when they need to hear more or less of something, you adjust that overall, and they're kind of happy. But in essence, you have to hear what they're hearing. Or the reverse is the same thing. They have to hear what you're hearing. And usually those aren't going to be the same thing. You may need to hear something very specific while you're recording, let's say the bass player. You may really want to listen how the bass and the kick are jamming, or how the bass and the chords and the guitar are working. But your bass player may just want to hear a ton of bass and a ton of the drum kit, or just a lot of the vocal. I don't know. So what I'm going to show you today really quickly is in Pro Tools, and it's very similar in most other DAWs, how to set up separate headphone mixes. Now, this is only really possible if your audio interface has a separate output other than your main stereo output. Meaning you've got analog outputs 3 and 4, you've got maybe a digital output like at SPDIF. You have some other output that you can route audio to. In my case, I've got a whole bunch of outputs I could use, but I'm going to just use the next two available to me. In my session right here, I've got all the different tracks, and if you notice, they're all routed to what I've called main outs. But on my interface, that's really analog 1 and 2. So it's a stereo output just coming right out of my box. Okay? So that's how I can hear all the audio coming out of my speakers, my studio monitors, or if I have headphones plugged in, I can hear them coming out of that. But if it's time to record another instrument, then what you want to do is set up a send to a separate output. Okay? I'll tell you what I mean. You would take their headphones, maybe you have a little headphone amp or something, and instead of physically plugging that into a copy of your main outs, you'd plug them into your next available output. In many of our cases, that would be like an output 3 and 4, okay? So when I'm recording someone else in my tracking room, I'll have them plug in a headphone amp out of analog 3 and 4 out of my Pro Tools rig. So if I press play and they just listen to audio, they're not gonna hear anything right now. They're just gonna hear silence because nothing is routed to 3 and 4. All my tracks are routed to analog 1 and 2. So instead, we'll use the sends, okay? So in Pro Tools, they're right here. And what you want to do is basically have a send to, in this case, analog 3 and 4. It's on my interface in Pro Tools. You can only send to outputs. You could send to a bus or a physical output. And this gives me a separate fader saying, okay, well, how much of the kick track do I want to send to whatever's listening in on the other side of analog 3 and 4, which in our cases would be the headphone amp in the other room with the bass player. So you can see that adjusting this will adjust the volume of the kick to his headphones. Very simple process. But two things here. One, in Pro Tools, to quickly set it up so that you don't have to put a new send on every track, because he may want to hear the keys or the piano or the room mic on the drum set. Simply hold Option or Alt if you're on a PC, and then click and repeat the same process. And now you see all these are all the same. So now every channel is sending their track to his headphones. So in essence, he can hear them all at 0. They're all the same volume. So what you're going to have to do is obviously adjust the volume and do a test run and turn down things that are too loud, or turn up things that you'd like to hear more of. But what's important here as well is a button up here called pre, and it's going to be somewhere on your faders in another DAW, but this is pre-fader metering. Okay, so this means that a pre-fader send is a send whose volume control is controlled pre whatever's going on down here in the main mix. Okay, meaning I could have this shaker send cranked up. He really wants to hear the shaker for whatever reason. But if I'm listening back here in the control room and I turn down the shaker track, because I don't need to hear it, I won't know. But actuality, he is not going to hear any shaker because this is post fader by default, meaning everything goes through the channel, through my main fader, and out the speakers, and also then to the send. And if there's no volume of which to go to the send, our headphone output over there in the other room on analog 3 and 4, it's not going to hear anything coming from this channel. Thus the invention of pre-fader. In Pro Tools, you just click that simple button, and now the routing is just slightly different. And all it is now audio comes down through the channel, hits our send, which is right here, sends a copy at whatever volume you want out that other output to our bass player in the other room, and it's completely happening before the shaker. So this can be all the way down, all the way up. It does not matter. Okay? So in essence, that's all you're going to do with setting up a separate headphone mix is use sends and then however many outputs you have. Obviously, the smaller interfaces, like the inboxes, like the really small inbox 2 Mini or the Fast Track Pro from Mint Audio or any of the small PreSonus rigs, all those guys typically have one set of outputs, and it's one stereo output. Maybe it's mirrored on your headphone jack on the front or something. So this isn't really an option for you if that's your interface, but typically if you have that interface or something like it, you're just recording yourself. And that's okay. Or you can still record somebody else, but they're just going to have to hear what you are hearing in the control room. And I've done that many, many times before, back in the day when I had a small interface as well. But if you have an interface that has at least one other stereo pair, then you can set up a send and just create your own set of little faders that create your own custom mix that go out of your DAW to the separate output. And then of course, if you have multiples, you can have a whole nother one set to analog 5 and 6. So you could track 2 different people at the same time and they could have their own mix separate of each other, separate from your control room mix. So I hope this is helpful to you guys setting up headphone mixes while you're tracking other people in your band or other musicians entirely. Again, this is Graham at therecordingrevolution.com. Thanks for checking out all these videos on YouTube and following the site and following things on Twitter. You guys are the best. I hope you're having a great start to your summer. Talk to you soon. Take care.